I'm supposed to be his example. But I spoke with him a few days ago and he said to me about this egg thing. He said, Dad, he's a cheat. Okay, and we're promoting the fight. And these people have me under a great deal of pressure. That's who we are. I don't care what they're doing. We have to bring them into a straight line. Because where this country is going with this behavior, the Warriors.
The upcoming fight between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, scheduled for April 26, 2025, at London's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, has reignited a famous family rivalry that captivated boxing fans in the 1990s. As excitement builds for the event, Chris Eubank, a key figure in this saga, has expressed serious concerns about the match, highlighting issues like weight differences and fighter safety.
Oh mate, that'd be legendary. That'd be legendary. I'd love that.
We know that your dad has had two very, very famous fights in the 90s with Chris Sr. You're, 3 or 4 weight divisions away from Chris Eubank Jr. at the moment, but you are 19 and you will continue to grow and you will continue to put weight on. What chance of you fighting Chris Eubank Jr. at some point in the future?
Oh mate, that'd be legendary. That'd be legendary. I'd love that. I'd love that. But there's so many obstacles I've got to get first before we can even consider that. Yeah. So far it's just a fantasy for the British public. But who knows? Who knows what the future holds?
In the early 1990s, British boxing was electrified by the intense rivalry between Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn. Their contrasting fighting styles and personalities led to unforgettable bouts. The first in 1990, when Eubank Sr. won via a 9th-round TKO, and a rematch in 1993 that ended in a draw. These matches not only defined an era, but set the stage for a new generation's rivalry between their sons. The idea of a fight between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn has been discussed for years, fueled by their fathers' legendary clashes. An attempt to organize this fight in October 2020 fell apart when Benn tested positive for a banned substance which can raise testosterone levels. Benn claimed the result was due to consuming too many eggs, a statement that sparked controversy and doubt. Despite the setback, Benn was eventually cleared by the UK anti-doping agency, leading to the rescheduled fight.
It's a mismatch. It's an entertaining matchup.
Why is it a mismatch?
Because of ability, because of weight classes. Chris Jr. is a middleweight and a super middleweight. He's naturally a super middleweight. So, he's having to starve himself to come down and, with all the catch weights and all of this stuff, it's a mismatch. He is operated at world level. He's been in with the likes of George Groves and, the list goes on. It's a mismatch in ability and weight class.
How is your relationship with your dad now?
We're in a weird, we're in a strange place in our lives at the moment. It's very hard to kind of, go through an entire career being with your old man and then to not have him around anymore in terms of, the boxing side of things. But I just felt that that's what I needed. I felt like I wanted to, and I would say this to him as well. I was like, listen, I'm going to write a book one day. The book can't be everything that my dad said I should do. I did. Mm-hmm. I've got to find out on my own. I've got to make my own choices. I've got to write my own.
Chris Eubank Sr. has been vocal in his opposition to the fight, expressing serious concerns about its potential risks. His main worry is the catch weight of 157 pounds, which requires his son to drop 3 pounds below his usual middleweight limit. Eubank Sr. has pointed out the dangers of such extreme weight cuts, stressing the strain it places on a fighter's body and the increased risk of injury. He has criticized the promoters for prioritizing financial gain over fighter safety. In a candid interview, Eubank Sr. stated, "You tried to murder my boys. I'm coming for you." His concerns are valid, as cutting weight can cause dehydration and reduce physical performance, jeopardizing a boxer's health. Eubank Sr. has argued that the fight should not take place under the current conditions, as it violates the principles of safety.
8 pounds? You better watch out, dreadlocks. You better watch out, because we are come for you. Sorry. It's my mother's tongue again. It comes through. You'd better watch out because we're not playing. We're real and we are a terror. And the procedure will be parliamentary. Rastafari.
Chris Eubank Sr. has continued to speak out against the fight between his son, Chris Eubank Jr., and Conor Benn, the son of his former rival, Nigel Benn. His primary concern is the agreed catch weight of 157 pounds, which he believes poses a serious health risk to his son. Eubank Sr. has warned that cutting to this weight could endanger Chris Jr.'s life, citing the dangers of severe weight loss in boxing. In an emotional appeal, Eubank Sr. called on both Conor and Nigel Benn to reconsider, offering to cover financial penalties to cancel the bout. Despite these concerns, Nigel Benn has insisted the fight should go ahead. Eubank Sr. has also accused the promoters of focusing on profit rather than fighter safety, criticizing the reckless decision to proceed with the match under potentially hazardous conditions.
Newspaper, and in that interview, Conor walked in, and I said to Conor, and I was saying to Nigel, please, don't do this. You know what it is to, my son is 33. For him to drop 3 pounds beneath 160 puts his life in danger. And Nigel said, sorry, if he doesn't take the fight, if he's above that, then he's going to have to pay a forfeit of £300,000. And I said, well, I'm very happy to pay that. So please, stand down. I was speaking to both of them. Nigel said, no, he's not standing down. He said he signed a contract. He's a grown man. So I said, Nigel, please, my king, please, don't do this.
Beyond his objections to the fight's arrangements, Eubank Sr. has suggested other paths for both fighters. He believes Conor Benn should focus on competing in his natural weight class of 147 pounds, targeting champions in the welterweight division, rather than stepping up to face Eubank Jr. Eubank Sr. has also proposed the idea of Benn fighting his nephew, Harlem Eubank, who competes at welterweight and recently called out Benn. The situation within the Eubank family has also come under scrutiny.
The concern for Eubank is the amount of weight this boy's got to cut to come down to, I think the fight's made at 160 pounds, is that right? Right. So he's got to come down from 100, from whatever his walking round weight is. Let's say he walks around at 180 pound when he's out of training. That's like 20 pound weight difference, right? That he's got to lose. It's not safe. It's not. He can't possibly be at his physically strongest. He can't. And he's really putting himself on the line, right? Because when your weight weakened, I know I've been weight drained in fights previously. So I'm speaking from a point of reference. When you're weight drained, it doesn't matter what you eat on the day. It doesn't make you stronger.
Chris Eubank Jr. has expressed a strong desire to have his father in his corner for the fight, as it holds significant personal meaning for continuing the family rivalry. However, the public opposition and safety concerns raised by Eubank Sr. have created tensions between father and son. Reports suggest a strained relationship between them, especially after several public incidents leading up to the fight. One notable moment was when Eubank Jr. smashed an egg on Conor Benn's face during a press conference, referencing Benn's earlier controversy with the failed drug test. This stunt led to a fine of £100,000 for Eubank Jr., further escalating tensions and resulting in a physical altercation between the fighters.
Boxing Media Hub here with some breaking news. So Chris Eubank Jr. has been fined £100,000 by the British Boxing Board of Control for slapping Conor Benn with an egg. So who's the one with egg on their face now?
Where's that money going? Because £100,000 is the kind of money that can make a huge difference to a huge amount of boxing clubs up and down the country that are the grassroots of the sport, that are getting kids off the street that need to be off the street and then onto the straight and narrow. Boxing clubs are, for many people, more than just a sports club. They are social workers, they're therapy, they're all these things, and yet that £100,000 is never going to be put into their pocket.
Former British boxer Paul Smith found Eubank Jr.'s egg incident amusing, admitting he laughed his head off. He called it poetic, highlighting the irony of Benn's earlier egg-related claim during the controversy over his failed test.
That slap, I personally do not call it a slap. I call that a marketing stunt, and that have helped to publicize or market or sell the fight way more, because Chris had to do that, and he basically made the fight very, very personal. And now we don't have to say it's because of their father's legacy, but hey, Conor will say, you slapped me and you tried to embarrass me, and then now I have to fight and show you that I am a better fighter and boxer than you. But I feel like also that is the best 100k Chris Eubank Jr. have ever spent. Listen, I would like to know your ringside opinions in a comment. Let me know what you think about that.
However, opinions on the egg incident varied within the boxing world. Liam Smith, another professional boxer, acknowledged the humor in the egg slap, but felt it was inappropriate in a professional setting.
I'll be there obviously on the night, but if I wasn't there,
what have you made of the antics?
I would be watching it.
What have you made of the antics? Do you think? I mean,
I've seen worse. I said about Chisora in throwing the table towards Dylan White. I was filming it. I was sitting in the front row of the press conference. I was at the press conference, and I was laughing and joking about it. And afterwards, it was okay. It was a bit of a rant by Chisora, but we expect that from Chisora. I'm not going to lie, when it happened, I laughed my head off. I absolutely laughed my head off.
I did too.
I thought it was quite poetic. I thought what happened was quite funny. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't something that, like, I had someone, Nigel, saying I thought he glassed him. I can understand by the noise of it. Things happen fast in the heat of a moment. I get it. But afterwards, all's well that ends well, really. And it's created a lot more fuss about the fight, a lot more column inches, a lot more press and publicity. All publicity is good publicity, but then the board come in and think they can find a fight at £100,000 for it, and that's their prerogative. But
Nigel Benn voiced his disapproval of the egg incident, stating that such actions damage the sport of boxing. He emphasized the importance of professionalism and respect, especially during promotional events, while he understood the personal stakes. Given his past rivalry with Chris Eubank Sr., Benn stressed that the focus should be on the fighter's skills and dedication, rather than sensationalized confrontations. Reflecting on the moment when Conor was confronted by Eubank Jr., Nigel admitted to feeling protective, but recognized that his son needed to face these challenges on his own to demonstrate resilience and composure.
I'm just glad that Conor didn't get hold of him. That's why I'm glad that Conor didn't get hold of him, because Conor was going, son. But then I had the opportunity, I'm like, and then the big bounce come and jump off of me.
In response to the fine, Eubank Jr. expressed frustration and confusion, saying, "It's definitely an unusually high number. There have been guys who have done much worse and been fined far less." He defended his actions, calling it a symbolic statement against cheating, stating, "What I did wasn't just a slap with an egg. It was a symbol letting the world know that if you cheat, you're going to get exposed."
Up here today on a stage with two of the scummiest characters in boxing, in my opinion, a drug cheat and a man who did everything in his power to help him get away with it. So me throwing an egg at somebody who absurdly claims that that is the reason why he failed 2 drugs tests because of contaminated eggs, I think that's light, and I think that's deserved. He deserved the embarrassment of what happened. You know, if I had an opportunity to do it again, I would.
In a candid interview from June 2023, former world champion Chris Eubank Sr. revealed his deep disappointment in his son's career, decisions, and training approach. One of his main concerns was Eubank Jr.'s perceived disregard for his father's guidance and professional advice. Eubank Sr. recounted a conversation with former heavyweight champion David Haye, who told him that Eubank Jr. had stopped sparring in preparation for fights and was surrounded by people who didn't challenge his decisions. Eubank Sr. said, "David, Haye called me the other day and said, Junior doesn't spar. He does everything he wants to do, and he's got yes men around him." This insular attitude and refusal to listen led to Eubank Sr. attributing his son's loss to arrogance, stating, "It is arrogance when you shut your ears." The strained father-son relationship became apparent when Eubank Jr. replaced his father. With Roy Jones Jr. as his trainer, Eubank Sr. lamented this separation, stating his son's potential was hindered by his refusal to listen. He claimed that, without his guidance, Eubank Jr. wouldn't have achieved the financial success he did, stating, "Without me, you can't make the money he's made."
You lost to a fighter called Billy Saunders. You shouldn't have lost that fight. You lost it because you were disobedient to the plan that I gave you. You started fighting after the 6th round. to prove to me that you could beat him at any time. I expressly put down in solid words, you are not fighting Billy Saunders, you are fighting the promoter. And you will not beat the promoter. As they say, you'd have to knock him out to get a draw. That's the humor they use. That's the influence of the promoters. And you gave him the first 6 rounds. You know, as far as I'm concerned, the fight belongs to Harlem the Gold Eubank, and you should be fighting Billy Joe Saunders and record a win over him, which you should have in the first instance. What more can I say?
Chris Eubank Jr. has recently opened up about his fractured relationship with his father. Chris Eubank Sr., the rift between them has been attributed to various factors, including professional disagreements, personal tragedies, and a desire for independence. A significant point of contention was Eubank Sr.'s opposition to his son's scheduled fight against Conor Benn on April 26, 2025. Eubank Jr. expressed frustration over his father's lack of support, saying, "We don't talk. He has shown no interest in my career or me for a long time." He pointed out the irony of his father's behavior, given that he has lost a son, calling it insane that his father isn't speaking to his remaining children. Eubank Jr. emphasized his need to forge his own path, saying, "I felt it wasn't working, and as my own man, I had learned enough and done enough to do my own thing."
Was not happy with that decision. That's the start of it. Then you have the situation with my brother passing away. That affected him in a deep way, affected all of us.
I talked to him around that time, and I could tell he was profoundly impacted by that.
That's right. Mental health is a real thing. That incident, coupled with the fact that we were already not seeing eye to eye, destroyed a large part of the relationship, and it still hasn't seemed to have recovered, unfortunately.
Have you made any attempt to get back together with him?
Of course.
Has he rebuffed that?
In an interview with pro boxing fans, trainer Teddy Atlas provided an in-depth analysis of the upcoming fight between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. He described the match as a banger, highlighting the personal animosity between the fighters and a legendary rivalry between their fathers, Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn. Atlas noted that this history adds extra excitement, likely ensuring a sold-out venue. He predicted that Eubank Jr. would try to keep the fight at range, using his hand speed, counterpunching, and ability to throw punches from various angles. He explained that space would be crucial for Eubank Jr. to execute his strategy. In contrast, Atlas anticipated that Benn would close the distance, applying relentless pressure and targeting the body to reduce Eubank Jr.'s mobility. He praised Benn's aggressive yet calculated style and strong defensive skills. On Eubank Sr.'s decision to boycott the fight due to concerns about the catch weight and rehydration clauses, Atlas fully supported the former champion's stance, acknowledging the dangers of weight cuts and agreeing that only a fighter truly knows their own body's limits.
It's got the history with the fathers, you know, the 2 fathers that were just iconic British fighters, great fighters. So it's got everything to draw the people in, you know, to watch that fight. You know, I mean, you got one guy, if I was to real fast give my thoughts on it without having gotten into it too much, you know, Eubanks, you know, wants to probably keep it on the outside as much as he can and use his skill sets to, you know.
Regarding training, Eubank Jr. has made significant changes. Having previously been coached by Roy Jones Jr., Eubank Jr. has now brought his father back into his corner for this fight. Jones has expressed concerns about Eubank Jr.'s approach, particularly regarding his perceived underestimation of Benn's punching power. Jones pointed to Benn's knockout Chris Algieri as proof of his power, advising Eubank Jr. to remain cautious. The financial stakes for this fight are high, with negotiations seeing Eubank Jr. agree to a 55-45 per split in his favor, a compromise that reflects his greater profile and experience. However, Ben has not fully agreed to these terms and is reportedly seeking a more favorable split. The outcome of this fight could greatly influence both fighters' careers, with talks of potential matchups against top-tier opponents like Canelo Alvarez for the victor. The fight between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn represents a complex mix of family legacy, personal ambition, and professional rivalry, with Chris Eubank Sr. as vocal objections underscoring concerns over weight and safety issues, as well as broader implications for both fighters' futures.
Let Conor go and have his illustrious career here in the United Kingdom and then in the United States, because he beats them all. That's how fantastic I think he is. I've always backed you, Conor. I've always backed you. Okay? You're sensible. If it's true that you've said things about me which are not complimentary, I don't mind that. I'm looking at the people that you're around. Here it is. You know the spirit world. That's how I know you're an honest man. The people around you are part of a gang. It's a team thing. You're the mark. Okay? The only person who's going to look out for you is you, supposed to be your dad, and people like me. You can trust me. Yeah, you've seen me get up in a fight I can't win and walk back into the fire. You can trust me. I'm not going to give you any, I'm not going to mislead you. You know, I'm a lawman.